Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour à tous. Welcome to the 59th meeting of the Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology. Today we have the Minister for Industry, Science and Technology with us, Minister Clement. And just before I go to Minister Clement's opening remarks, Mr. Rhoda. Did you want to just mention your notice?
Yes, I've got a motion before committee, and it reads that notwithstanding any previously scheduled committee activity, the committee invite Tony Clement, Minister of Industry, and Gary Goodyear, Minister of the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, to testify on the Supplementary Estimates C 2010-2011 on March 10th, 2011 from 3:30 till 5:30. I think it's fairly straightforward. The Minister is here. We're just so happy to have him. We want him back.
Thank you, Mr. Rhoda. Okay, we won't have anybody speak to that right now. That's simply a notice of motion by Mr. Rhoda for that to be discussed on Thursday. And now, Minister Clement, we're glad to have you here, and we'll go to your opening remarks, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today to share my thoughts on the topic of usage-based billing for wholesale Internet services, as well as perhaps some broader thoughts as well. À titre de ministre de
As Canada's Industry Minister, it is my job to help encourage an innovative and competitive marketplace and to ensure Canadian consumers have real choices in the services they purchase.
Technologies represent only about 5% of our country's GDP. I truly believe, and the statistics bear this out, that it drives the performance of the other 95%. ICT is the engine that propels us, the fuel that drives us, and we must never lose sight of the importance of information and communication technologies. That's why I've made ICT and the digital economy more broadly one of my personal priorities as Industry Minister, and it is why I will be launching Canada's first comprehensive digital economy strategy later on this spring. I want to make sure as well that consumers are not left out when we talk about Canada's digital economy and plan for it. Now, of course, businesses are important, and I will speak about that in just a couple of minutes. And of course, academia is important, and government initiatives are important too. But if we lose sight of the consumer, I think we lose sight of something critically important to the success of the digital economy strategy and of the economy more generally. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's clear that more competition and more choice for consumers help the adoption of the digital economy, helps us to be competitive, helps us to be innovative, helps us to be creative as citizens, and also helps our small businesses to succeed. All of these things are going to be necessary for a society that is built on the knowledge economy. Our goal is to find the right balance for the marketplace, to provide the right environment for entrepreneurs to flourish, for innovative new ideas to take root, and for real opportunity and real job creation. Nous devons nous assurer.
We need to make sure that government telecommunications policies encourage investment and competition, increase consumer choice, minimize regulation, and allow market forces to prevail. These are our policies, and this is our focus. Without doubt, Canadian telecommunications carriers have made significant infrastructure investments in the past few years. As a result, Canadians now have access to multiple advanced networks and world-class services across Canada.
Carriers are investing because it pays to do so for them. They are responding to demands from customers. They also themselves stimulate demand to add new services and higher speeds via their advertising and promotion. Now, in response to this new consumer environment, back in 2006, our government issued a policy direction to the CRTC that recognized the importance of competition and fairness. Dans les instructions, nous ordonnions.
The policy direction instructed the CRTC to rely on market forces to the maximum extent feasible, and when using regulatory measures, to ensure technological and competitive neutrality where possible, to enable competition from new technologies, and not to artificially favor either incumbents or independent internet service providers.
Stated that regulation, when necessary, should be light-handed and proportionate to its purpose. Turning directly to the issue of usage-based billing, let me say that access to the internet is an increasingly important part of the lives of Canadians, and I would say more than just important. Actually, it means that in today's day and age, internet access is fast becoming a crucial part of the social and economic fabric of the country. Affordability and choice are central to the ongoing dialogue, and we are certainly all well aware of the importance of broadband networks for business innovation. In this context, the CRTC decision on usage-based billing for wholesale ISPs is quite simply the wrong way to proceed and is inconsistent with good public policy. Independent ISPs must not be forced to adopt the same retail pricing strategy as the incumbents. To do so is to limit consumer choice and remove meaningful competition from the market. Moreover, in this year, in 2011, designated by our government as the Year of the Entrepreneur, if such a decision were allowed to stand, the effects are far-reaching, not only for consumers, but also for entrepreneurs, creators, innovators, and small businesses throughout the country. Furthermore, there are many new and innovative businesses taking root right here in Canada that depend on being able to provide services or content to their customers over the internet. The cutting edge of cloud computing services relies on customers and clients, many using residential lines, having fair and affordable internet access. So without the right competitive pressures, usage-based billing threatens to choke off these types of innovative businesses and the benefits that they can bring to Canadian consumers and Canada's digital economy. Turning now to the independent ISPs themselves, the fact is that in many cases, these companies are doing far more than simply reselling incumbent network services. Indeed, they often provide more than simple internet access. Many provide a different end product to their users, sometimes serving niche markets that, while relatively small as compared to the retail market of incumbent carriers, are vital to promoting innovation, competition, and consumer choice. Now, Chair, I have heard from a great many Canadians on this file, and I've had the benefit of literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians communicating with me and the government on the issue before the CRTC, but also on the broader issues of retail pricing, service quality and availability, the current state of choice in Canada, net neutrality, and other related issues. I want to thank Canadians publicly for participating in this ongoing and critical discussion of these matters. I think the point...
event. Now, I'd like to, passing over the issue itself of UBB, I would like to ask about the procedure by which you notified the President of the CRTC that you were going to object to his ruling. I spoke to Conrad von Finkenstein when he appeared in front of our committee a little while ago and asked him how he was notified about the fact that you were going to, that you did not agree with the CRTC's ruling. He told me that you were not in contact, or the ministry, with him, but that he found out, like everybody else, through one of your tweets. Are we, in fact, setting government policy and government decisions by means of 140 characters that you send out in the middle of the night to tell the CRTC, a respected regulatory body, how decisions are made in this country?
Let me comment on a couple of things you've said, if I could, Mr. Garneau. Firstly, I dispute your characterization of government policy. I think our government policy is quite clear. And we actually have it in the form of a policy directive to the CRTC. We're in favor of choice, and we're in favor of competition. I don't think anything could be clearer. And throughout my tenure as industry minister, I've used that as the guiding light for policy decisions, some of which do tend to be controversial. It's the same test I used to implement the wireless auction results to make sure that we had new entrants in wireless. It's the same test I use in terms of internet access. So I think that Canadians understand that policy. I believe that the players in this particular area, the telecom players and the internet players, understand that policy, competition and choice.
I would say to you, Minister, I
know it's your job to disagree with that, but that's pretty clear.
Yeah, but I would say to you, Minister, that the reason that you overturned the CRTC is because the CRTC is trying to interpret its mandate. For example, it argues that in 2006, the directives it received from one of your predecessors, Mr. Bernier, with respect to how it should deal with competition, that it interpreted it in its fashion. Now, we can agree or disagree, but the point about it is that obviously you have a difference of opinion with what Minister Bernier had decided back in 2006, so you overturned his decision. On the question of Global Live, which is another subject where you overturned the CRTC decision, you are in fact, of course, now we're taking it to the courts. So the point about it is, in a proper working government, it seems to me that there should be very few instances where the CRTC is overturned.
I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think of 2,200 CRTC decisions. We varied 3 and referred 3 back. So I really think that this is the exception rather than the rule. So I disagree with your characterization.
Minister,
with respect to, can I answer your questions? Is that possible?
Well, I think you just did.
Well, I haven't answered all your questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'd like to continue on and
Very well.
And turn to the other topic that you raised, which was my use of Twitter. And I would just say to you that we as public officials and as politicians should use every means at our disposal to have a dialogue with Canadians, to be accountable and responsible with and to Canadians. I have probably numbering in the thousands amongst my followers.
Should that include
media,
contempt for Parliament?
Excuse me.
Should that include contempt for Parliament?
Of course it doesn't. So I would say of the 12,000 followers I have, probably 2,000 or 3,000 of them are media, the great many of which are Canadian media. And so there is nothing different from articulating government policy via social media as compared to a news release or a press conference or other means that have been traditionally available to politicians. I don't think you should fear that. I would encourage you to
I would say to you that when I was president of the Canadian Space Agency, now it was before tweeting, if the Minister of Industry wanted to make me aware of something, he or she informed me so that I would know before it became public to everybody.
I can assure you that my first allegiance is to the people of Canada, not necessarily the chair of the CRTC. And I make no apologies.
I think you made that very clear. What is your policy on?
But I still respect him.
What is your policy on net neutrality, Minister?
Well, I think I raised that issue in my remarks, Mr. Garneau, and I indicated that the CRTC has a policy that they have articulated on net neutrality, which indicates to the incumbents and other internet service providers that they cannot simply shape traffic via throttling if they have not successfully used other tools. And the other tools that are available to deal with net neutrality, which I favor, of course, are investing in your network, are other less intrusive means of dealing with traffic shaping, if that is your goal, and you have to be transparent about it. So I agree with the CRTC that you can't, that a provider can't just wake up one morning and decide to shape its traffic without having a dialogue with its customer, consumer, and without organizing its affairs so that it uses other means available to deal with congestion, if it does exist, before using throttling.
You realize, Minister, we're hearing about this for the first time today. Where is your policy?
The CRTC
way over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardin for 7 minutes.
Mr. Cardin, you have 7 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister, good afternoon and thank you for coming. First of all, we can start with Bernier in 2006, and in the Bernier ruling, in the ruling 2009, you asked the CRC to review the 2008 decision, and 111 for 2009, relating to so-called speed matching. I see that in this particular case, the CRTC did protect competitiveness of the independent providers against the wishes of the incumbent carriers. You asked the CRTC to review this decision, giving priority to the arguments put forward by Bell. Can you explain how the decision relating to speed matching was improper, and why was it necessary to overturn it?
Certainly, again, our guiding principle is competition and choice. Notre principe, c'est le choix pour les consommateurs,
Choice for consumers, as well as the need for competition.
With the CRTC on that issue, the speed matching decision issue, does correlate to those principles, that we wanted to make sure that internet markets were constructed in such a way that Canadians can receive the full benefits of the internet and the digital economy. So when we did, as a cabinet, direct the CRTC to reconsider those decisions, that purpose was clearly framed in that reconsideration. We said in the order in council that it's critical that the regulatory regime provide a cohesive, forward-looking framework that provides the proper incentives for continued investment in broadband infrastructure, encourages competition and innovation, and leads to consumer choice. So it all, in my view, fits within the idea that competition and choice are important for consumers and important for our economy.
Oui, ça c'est le message.
Yes, this is the general message for all matters in this respect, but in this particular instance, in the case of speed matching, variable speed, it would be automatic that this would give an advantage to Bell. It would give an advantage to Bell, of course, because if the speed is not the same, then competition doesn't exist in the same way. So I put the question, does this mean that Bill will can order your government to re-examine the decision of CRTC? Is it Bell that is the boss here?
Clearly, we look at each issue independently, but with a view to being consistent in the dialogue that we have with the CRTC. I think in that case, we were consistent, that we wanted to give consumers the best services available. That's what speed matching is all about. I think it has borne itself out as the right decision. So maybe, Monsieur Cardin, you and I disagree, but I think ultimately we are being consistent and being in favor of the consumer.
Mais vous savez que depuis
You know that since the Conservative government came to power, there were a number of unfavorable decisions for the consumers, for the independent service providers, and competition in Internet. Previously, the government never intervened when decisions were favorable to Bell or to incumbent carriers. The only time the CRTC protected competition, the government asked it to review its decision and give priority to the main arguments of Bell. Do you not believe that you are sending out quite contradictory messages to the CRTC by asking it to review its decisions relating to user-based billing when it is respecting the spirit of your Directive 2009-2007? I think that it is important to have a network that does work properly for consumers, and it is important as well to have, as I said, choice and competition in the marketplace. Our position is quite clear, and it was clear with the directive in 2006.
Bell's bidding. I don't think Bell would come here and say, I'm doing Bell's bidding when it comes to usage-based billing. I can assure you of that. They have a very different position than I have, and I say that with respect, but that's the reality of the situation. I think for our economy to not only survive but thrive, we do need more choice and more competition. This particular segment of our economy is moving at the speed of light, and we have to ensure that interests are well balanced, and that if a particular provider is not providing good service or good choices or a pricing package that meets a consumer's need or a small business person's need or a creator's need, that there be other choices available to those people in our society. I think that's very important.
Mais c'est certain que ça peut influencer.
Of course, this can have an influence, and when you have approximately 500,000 people reacting almost immediately, saying that we are against this, it may influence your decision to go against Bell. But the fact is that Bell asked the report that the matter be delayed for 60 days, and this does respond to the Bernier ruling. And if we look at this decision, and we've seen point 2 in the various items, the directives that you've given to CRTC, if the impact of this would have a harmful effect on the ability of the incumbent to provide new convergent services, so it was quite clear that the directive did exist, and the way to put it into effect was through UBB in a way, such a way as to free up the network and to include IP as well. Can you explain to me how the 2008 decision and 2009 one on these speed matching did not respect the 2006 Bernier ruling?
A back and forth between the Cabinet and the CRTC. The CRTC concluded that without wholesale services at higher speeds that match retail offerings, that basically you have a duopoly between telco and cableco on that in that area, unless it matched. That therefore there would that duopoly would be continued. So I think that that's the decision of the CRTC. We let that decision stand, and ultimately I think that give and take is important. You mentioned earlier on in your remarks about the response that we got from Canadians. I make no apologies for reading emails and reading tweets, and if people want to send me smoke signals, that's okay too. The fact of the matter is, by good coincidence and by good policy, the Canadians agree with us that UBB imposed on wholesalers is a bad thing for consumers, for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, and by good policy and by happy coincidence, we're on the same side as Canadians.
Expliquez-moi pourquoi vous avez changé. Que c'était la directive que vous donniez au CRTC.
I know there's lots of questions, but the time is way overdue. I was trying to allow the minister to answer your question, and so now we need to go to Mr. Lake for 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And when we were hearing from witnesses before the committee, one of the things that we heard referred to was that only 6% of Canadians, are actually affected by this decision. Maybe you could speak to the importance of that 6% of Canadians and the ISPs that serve them in terms of competition in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think this is an important point because while they represent a small segment of the marketplace, in many cases they can help drive choice and competition. That's how competition works. If you know that a competitor of yours is offering a product that is gaining traction and ground and support, and consumers are attracted to it, then you're, as a provider, more likely to rearrange your offerings to meet that competitive threat. So while it is simply 6% of the market, I think it is important to realize that that competition does exist, that people, if they so choose, can make different choices. And that's why by forcing a similar pricing model on those wholesale independent ISPs, what you're doing is eliminating the choice. And that is what I found the most concerning about the original CRTC decision. So, yeah, small part of the marketplace, I get that, but at the same time, an important part of the marketplace so that we can preserve some balance, whereas otherwise you would have basically a monochrome product offering and less choice in the marketplace as a result.
There's been a lot of talk about the policy direction, the 2006 policy direction. Opposition members have talked about a lot. I wonder, though, as I read it, if they've ever actually read the policy direction, because it talks significantly about the market. It talks significantly about competition, competitive neutrality. As you mentioned, it instructed the CRTC to rely on market forces to the maximum extent feasible, and when using regulatory measures to ensure technological and competitive neutrality where possible, to enable competition from new technologies, and not to artificially favor either incumbents or independent ISPs. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit, because it seems to me that when I read that, this decision does not meet that criteria.
Well, and the CRTC did a lot of work after the policy direction, not only on the directive itself on a forward-looking basis, but they also did a comprehensive review of the current policies that were in place at the time in 2007 and 2008. And when they completed their reviews, there were a lot of measures they took to be more consistent with the policy direction. So it really was a watershed moment for our government and for public policy in this area. The Commission changed their administrative rules, changed some of the requirements, found that some of their earlier requirements were disproportionate or irrelevant relative to a market-based approach. So it really was a whole architecture that was created as a result of that. The next big step was, of course, on the wireless side, reserving spectrum for new entrants. That's an important element of this, I believe, as well, when you look at telecom from the broader perspective, not just the internet perspective. And again, consistent with competition, consistent with choice, a huge decision which allowed for more competition in the wireless. We're seeing the benefits of that. We're seeing even the incumbents offering more services that are geared to what they see as the competitive threat from the new entrants. That's all good. That's the kind of thing you want to see in the marketplace. Choice, variation on pricing models and service models and so on. So I think that we can look back on this past 5 years and say we have ushered in a revolution when it comes to these very important areas of our economy.
Now, you've indicated that regardless of the CRTC decision, Cabinet will be overturning their ruling. I want to talk a little bit about that sort of relationship between the CRTC and the government. How many, you'd mentioned this a little earlier, how many times has the government overruled the CRTC?
Well, there was something like 2,200 decisions just in the telecom space, not even including broadcasting, because obviously the CRTC is the regulatory body for both telecom issues and broadcasting issues. So carve away the broadcasting issues for a second. I believe there was something like 2,200 rulings by the CRTC over the course of our tenure in government. And of those, we varied 3, and we referred back another 3. So that's 6 out of 2,200. So this whole accusation that we are stripping away all the authority of the CRTC, that somehow we have now stood in the place of the CRTC, that's just not accurate. But when we have to defend the policy directive, choice and competition for consumers, we will do so.
Okay, and that was what I was going to ask. There are some that would ask, you know, regardless of the numbers, why should the government be allowed or able to tell the CRTC, an arm's length agency, you know, how to do their job?
Sure. Well, the first thing I say is it's in the Act. So we have the Governor and Council, the Cabinet, has the ability, has the right, I would say has the obligation under the Act, under the Telecommunications Act, to vary or refer back a decision that Cabinet feels is contrary to the public policy. And you don't do that, believe me, every day of the week, but you use that power sparingly. But in certain instances, it is necessary to do that if we feel that the CRTC has in some way veered away from the sound public policy that has been put in place. And that's the only time that we should do that, and that's the only time that we do that.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing that is not covered under the CRTC regulatory regime is how close your BlackBerry is to the microphone, and the interference makes it impossible for the translators to translate. So if you could just make sure it's a distance away, and then we won't get that interference. And now on to Mr. Massey for 7 minutes.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here. Your revolution that you've brought in has led to a consumer revolt in this country. And that's what we're seeing with the UBB, the pressure coming and the extreme changes in some of the incumbents for everything from throttling to attempting UBB. I mean, you look at the headlines even today, you got Rogers to take flight over TV fees to country's top ports after narrow loss. Gloves are off in wireless airwaves. Get ready to pay for more TV. We saw, and to be fair to you, there were several complaints prior to this by all those in the industry. Decisions led up to this moment, but what we really have now is a dog's breakfast. And you talk about the fact that you really want to improve competition, and then you talk about the spectrum auction that we had, but you screwed up the last one. We have now a court case and a greater uncertainty. What makes you think that Canadians can trust you with this important asset for the next round?
Well, I guess I disagree with your characterization of my tenure as industry minister. I hope you don't mind if I do that. But I would also say that again, we have been crystal clear. We favor policies that give more competition and choice to consumers, either in wireless or internet or other aspects of the sector. And if we feel that something might be threatening that, that is a huge threat to the future of our economy, because, as I mentioned, just as one example, cloud computing, which Canada should be a leader as a venue for cloud computing. If we have the wrong structure in place, then that will not occur in this society. So the stakes are very high. So you talk about some of the disagreements I've had with the sector. I make no apologies for that. I think that I'm sticking up for consumers, creators, businesses, innovators. That's my job.
Well, how good is it for them now, the system that you put in place, or the process for the last spectrum auction, now has a Canadian government in the courts because you overturned the CRTC? How is that good for consumers? How is that good for a company looking to invest in Canada? Because you allowed different rules for that spectrum auction. Others that came into the market felt that was not fair, went to the courts, won, and now you're actually going to have to see a court case unwind, maybe all the way to the Supreme Court. So there's uncertainty about investing in the company. There's uncertainty about others investing and who the real competition is. And then we have another spectrum auction coming up. And what's going to happen? Are we going to have another court case for the spectrum auction? That delays innovation and investment into the industry. So what are you going to do about this spectrum auction this time?
Well, let me just say, look, first of all, no one likes being in court. But there are times when one has to be... But you put yourself in that position. Excuse me, Brian. Okay. You know, I think... I don't think I put myself in that position. We made, as a department, a factual decision that Global Live in that case was as Canadian as it needs to be, pursuant to the Telecommunications Act. CRTC disagreed. We are in court because that has been taken to court by one of the other players. So that's their right to do that. That doesn't change our motivation. I mean, we have legal reasons why we think we're right on the court case. I won't bore you with those details, but I will tell you that behind the legal reasons why we're right, there's also the public policy that is right. More competition, new entrants, the idea that people have choices in their wireless, that they're not just beholden to a duopoly or an oligopoly in that regard. I thought you and I might be agreeing on that, actually.
Well, I do. But the problem is the process that we just went through, the spectrum auction, hasn't created the certainty I think the industry needs.
Well, you know what? I used to be in business, Brian. You know, there is certainty. Business people crave certainty. But you know what? When you're in business, you're not going to get 100% certainty. So they have to suck it up and deal with that.
Well,
that's
we're
why
talking
they're
about
in
billions
business.
of dollars in public money here as well, too.
Well,
and
no,
this is an asset for Canadians.
That's fine.
Before the next spectrum auction, is a digital strategy going to come out, or are you going to have the auction after or before your digital strategy?
I missed the first part of
your digital strategy that you mentioned in your speech.
Sure.
When is that going to be available for Canadians? So we've needed this for a long time. And is that going to be
I mentioned spring, yeah.
Spring. Is that going to be before the spectrum auction or after the spectrum auction?
Well, elements of it will be before and elements will pertain to.
Okay, because there's already a fight between some of the operators about how that should be done. Wouldn't it make more sense to have a digital strategy and then roll out the spectrum auction to make sure that it is going to be
I think that's what I'm saying.
Rules?
Yeah, but I mean, some of it has to do with the actual details of the spectrum auction. So we can have some broad principles that can come out in the spring. We've just closed off the consultation on the 700 megahertz. Mm-hmm. We've had the consultation on the 2500. So we're going through the submissions that have come in on that, and in due course, pursuant to I think good public policy, we'll be able to give the industry as well as Canadians, I think, our best take on how that should proceed.
If that auction leads to another lawsuit, do you think that's a good or a bad thing for Canadians?
As I said, no one likes to be in court, but on the other extreme, I'm not going to fold. I'm not going to fold like a $3 suitcase because somebody's upset that I'm on the side of consumers.
Well, it wasn't actually on the side of consumers.
It was on the side of consumers.
No, you actually, what you've done through that is that you've delayed investment into Canada with this.
No, not at all. I think what I've done is said.
There's greater uncertainty today than there was ever before, and we have this auction available for us, which is precious in terms of a resource, and we're going to get billions of dollars from it. How do you guarantee that you're not going to...
I don't know where you're coming from on that, Brian. The fact of the matter is, no one's investing in 700 megahertz yet because they don't know what the rules are, but we are asking them for their opinion, which is the good way to do process and public policy. So we've just closed off that consultation, and in the case of the spectrum auction that occurred in 2008, people bid, people got spectrum. They are using the spectrum. There are actually phone sets out there and devices out there that use that spectrum. It's growing. There's more competition. It means that the incumbents have to sharpen their game and sharpen their pencil for the consumer. I can't imagine you're against that.
No, I'm not against it. What I want to see is a fair, open process. So when we actually get it out there, it's not going to have a situation where we end up having lawsuits again.
I just think
that it's because of your actions as a minister overturning the CRTC
again.
I
think it's because
they had an opinion that there was an unfair process.
Well, they have an opinion which is guided by their corporate interests, but I'm not here for that. I'm here to execute good public policy.
Is not a corporation.
Okay. That's well over time. I tried to give the minister a minute to respond to your question there. Now we're going to second round, 5 minutes, and we need to keep that. And for fairness, Mr. Rota for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here today. The CRTC, as we know, is an independent organization. It regulates and supervises Canadian broadcasting telecommunication systems. It's independent. It's there. It's supposed to do its job. In its job, the mandate is to ensure that the broadcasting and telecommunication system serves the Canadian public. You know, the CRTC uses government, or it gets its objectives from the Broadcasting Act and the Telecommunications Act to guide its policy decisions. And from what I can gather is it's using its guidelines, its beacon in what was said by the minister at the time in 2006, Minister of Industry, your office, that they were moving to market forces. Now, market forces sounds good. And it would seem to me that when you talk about market forces, you just open up the doors and let the market prevail. I know I hear it from the other side. It seems to be a conservative mantra that just let the market take care of it and everything will take care of itself. I have some reservations about that. So earlier when you were asked, well, what do you really mean? What is the government policy? Choice and competition. That sounds good. It's fluffy. It sounds good, but it really doesn't give me anything to go to. So I'm wondering, you know, 5 years go by and all we have to offer the CRTC as objectives is, you know, let's go with market forces, choice and competition. And if it doesn't suit your office, then it gets overturned. And what I see here is a return to what happened years ago, because when I look at the UBB, what happened with this last month or so, it's almost like there was a crisis that showed up again. It was created. And guess what? The minister comes across as a hero. Isn't that lovely? Well, that's like saying, like, you know, here's the guy who sets the fire. He's a hero because he called the fire department. I'm sorry, but I have a hard time with this. Now, I'll get to my question. You know, there was a series of decisions that were made regarding the UBB and are consistent with what I believe was given in 2006. Are you saying that these guidelines have been changed, or the CRTC didn't follow them? If they didn't follow them, what is it that didn't quite match up with the original policies?
Sure. Let me say a couple of things in answer to that series of questions. First of all, of course, I'm distilling down competition and choice for the purposes of this hearing. But of course, there was a whole, I think I referred to the whole process.
Did you say stilling down or dumbing down? I'm sorry?
No, I said distilling.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to clarify.
Yes, but not in the alcoholic sense, I can assure you. Certainly, there was a whole process that was engaged in by the CRTC to implement the policy directive of 2006. As I said, they reviewed all of their purposes and their procedures and their regulations, and that there's a whole architecture that's involved there. So I think that Canadians watching or listening into this hearing should be assured that there was a lot of consideration, a lot of good public policy making by both the regulator and by the government in this regard. So I just want to put that on the record. 2,200 decisions since beginning of 2006. I think there's, as I said, there are several that we feel are outside of the policy directive and that would have a deleterious impact. So on the UBB decision, I've been very clear. I hope I've been articulate. That's for others to decide. But I've said, look, if you want choice and competition, you can't force down the throats of the independent ISPs a business model that means that they can't compete with their own business model. That's not choice and competition.
Yeah, I'm not debating that. I just thought it was kind of interesting that here's the policy. It's given to the regulating agency. They make a decision based on what was there given by the government, and then all of a sudden they're being overturned. Was there, and it just seems that, again, just this confrontation, was there any discussion beforehand? It seems that all of a sudden on January 25th, at the 11th hour, all of a sudden there was this overruling. Yeah, was there no discussion coming up to that?
No, I can speak to that. I actually, based on the advice that I received from the department, I was not able to speak to either the Commission or to the public about the issue until the appeal period was over. The first peep you heard out of me was after the appeal period was over.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
So there was
Mr. Rhoda, it's time. Now on to Mr. Braid for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and officials, for being here this afternoon. Minister, in your comments in your presentation with respect to usage-based billing, the UBB issue, you've made this distinction between the retail and the wholesale, and that we have this retail model of UBB being imposed, if you will, on the wholesale relationship with the independent ISPs. Why are you making the distinction between the retail and the wholesale, and why does this underscore why this is not an appropriate course of action to follow?
Yeah, as I think I mentioned, actually, retail is not under the purview of the CRTC to regulate the prices or the pricing structure. Wholesale exists because of the determination, which I think is factually correct, that there you have to carve out some of the broadband that's available for independent ISPs. Otherwise, you would have a monopoly or a duopoly situation. And so the CRTC does have some regulatory weight in the wholesale area because they are the ones, on behalf of Canadians, that created the wholesale market and said independent ISPs have to gain entrance to that bandwidth that is made available by regulatory authority, by Bell in that particular case. So that's why wholesale is different from retail. The only reason why the debate has become enmeshed a little bit is because one of the arguments against the government's position is that if you allow wholesalers to create an all-you-can-eat buffet kind of pricing model, it'll affect the retail. This is the scary argument that is employed to say to everyone else in the universe that isn't part of the 6% of the market, to say to the other 94% of the market, if we don't have a handle on this and force our business model on that 6%, it's going to affect your costs in the other 94%. I've been pretty clear on that. I mean, that's a worthy debate to have, but I've seen no evidence of that. I've seen no evidence that that 6% tail drives the 94% dog. And quite frankly, there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence that that there is congestion as a result of any of that. And there's no evidence that the pricing structure of UBB in the retail market is the solution if congestion did exist. Because if you look at the pricing structure, if you've got a 25 gig or 60 gig cap, and over which you're paying per gig, well, under that model, if you're downloading Netflix at 3 a.m. and go over your cap, you're charged per gig, even though there's no congestion. No one's saying there's congestion at 3 a.m. Everyone's saying, well, there might be congestion at 6 or 8 p.m. or who knows what they're saying. But there's no correlation in the pricing structure on the retail side to fix that problem if it's a problem. And that's where I get my dander up. But quite frankly, I'm not here saying I'm regulating that tomorrow, because as long as we create a worthy, competitive, choice-based market, then if you don't like what's happening at 6 p.m. on your internet service provider, go to somebody else. That's the best solution, in my view.
Thank you. As we know, the CRTC is reviewing its original UBB decision through a 60-day process. As part of that, they're engaging in a public consultation process. In your mind, Minister, what would you consider an acceptable revised decision? What would an acceptable revised decision look like from the CRTC?
Well, I appreciate the question, but I don't think it's fair to the CRTC or to the process that I rewrite their decision for them. They're in good faith reviewing their decision. I think that's a commendable thing for the CRTC to do. I will let them, of course, do that. What I have said, though, when that decision was communicated by the CRTC chairman, what I've said, though, is, okay, great that you're reviewing the decision, but keep in mind that if you come back with the same decision you had before, that doesn't solve the problem, because we still believe that that does not facilitate competition and choice. So that's the prism through which we are observing the CRTC process, and ultimately, and really, it's not only for Tony Clement or anyone else to decide what is acceptable. Really, it's up to the consumers, and let's give them the ability to say this is acceptable, or I'm going somewhere else. That's the best model, I think.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you, Mr. Braid. Now on to Mr. Cardin for 5 minutes. And I understand you're going to be sharing with Mr.
Monsieur le Président. Oui, je vais partager mon temps.
Yes, I'll be sharing my time with Mr. Bouchard. According to Mr. Lake, previously, the Bernier decision in 2006 would not encourage the independents and the incumbents. We could express it somewhat differently. The 2009 decision and the 2007 one says that the CRTC should, in 2 or 3 words, I'll attempt to paraphrase, should ensure that its decisions do not have a harmful effect on Bell for its IP. The CRTC on speed matching would ensure the survival of independent service providers. It would protect competition. The 2009-2007 decision asked that there be a review of the decision, and I wonder why this was the case.
Detail in there, but I guess what you're seeing is throughout the 5-year period a grappling, if I can use that term, of some of the important issues in the internet age by the regulator, and the interaction between the regulator and the government that is on a principle-based basis trying to make sure that there's more competition and choice. So it may be, Mr. Cardin, that there are different decisions of the CRTC that you agree or disagree with, or that I agree or disagree with. But ultimately, I believe, my personal opinion is that Cabinet should intervene when a decision, if it were to stand, would have such an impact on the ability for choice and competition to exist that there really is no other alternative to the Cabinet but to vary or refer back the decision. I think we're trying to be fair and reasonable here, and I don't think it's my place to overturn every single decision of the CRTC, nor is it my place to ignore every single decision of the CRTC if it has a deleterious effect on the marketplace. So that's the balancing that we're trying to pursue here.
Mon collègue meurt d'envie.
My colleague would like to put a question to you as well. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, ladies. Following the decision of the CRTC relating to UBB, citizen Jacques-Paul Mizet sent a petition to the Governor and Council asking you to suspend the application of this particular decision. Can you tell me why your government did not publish this petition in the Canada Gazette?
Question, and I first heard about this issue through a tweet, actually, from a citizen. When I did receive that communication, I did, through my office, inquire as to why that was the case. I learned that in the normal course, if the CRTC suspends a decision, which is what they did in this case, in the normal course, the CRTC would then not publish the petition. But I believe we have agreement with them that they will publish the petition. I think it's going to be gazetted in the next 3 weeks. So I want to thank the citizen on Twitter who brought this to my attention, and we have acted because it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Merci. Au fond,
I think that this particular citizen seems to hold the same view as you. Would you be willing to order the CRTC to pre-establish the essential status of access service so that the CRTC can regulate this in a proportional manner and an efficient manner in the interests of consumers? Gateway access. when I said that it was important in the case of UBB to have a choice, to have competition. It is for this particular reason that we did react when I announced that it was important to have another decision. The CRTC decision cannot be maintained in the system that we have.
If you're referring to retail as opposed to wholesale, I'm not quite sure whether I got whether you're referring to all of UBB or just wholesale, but if you're referring to retail as well, I think I'll stand by my finely balanced remarks in my presentation where I said that there would be no need for further intervention in the retail side if competition were to exist, because then people have choices. They can go somewhere else if they don't like what their retailer, what their ISP is providing to them. So that, to me, is the key test of whether the market is starting to function in a way that we can recognize.
Merci, Monsieur Bouchard, Monsieur Ministre. That's all the time that we have right now. And, Minister, you dedicated your time here, but I think if you want some closing remarks and you have time, then...
No, it's okay.
No?
No.
Okay, then that's the end of the meeting, and we're adjourned.